This is our old Ruiz Iris Douglassiana, our native iris garden back in here. And we've taken a lot of them out and subsequently replanted them because it was so thick with weeds you could hardly even see the iris except when they're blooming. But keeping on top of the weeds has been a real problem, but it's staying there. So we think in a few years when the iris completely grow back in, it should be a real show, almost exclusively iris, because when they go off in the mid-spring, they're just really a show. This ceanothus was here. That's a native one, and there's another one down the way. We're planting some more forms of it far into the garden up there. And what you're going to see mostly in here are rhododendrons and azaleas. All azaleas are rhododendrons. Genus rhododendron, azaleas and rhododendrons break out of that, but all azaleas and rhododendrons are in the same group. And in general, but not always, azaleas have smaller leaves. They all have what they call adpressed hairs, little hairs in the leaf. You'll look at them real closely. All of them will have these hairs, but some rhododendrons do too. Some rhododendrons have very small leaves. You'll see those way down at the corner down there. Those are all rhododendrons. What's the main difference? Usually, not always, but usually azaleas have 5 stamens, and rhododendrons have typically more than 8, sometimes 14 or 15. And you can usually put the flower, and you'll see them down here. We have a series of azaleas called the Encore series. So I think we're the only ones in California with them right now. They've just become available nationwide. They're still growing on in Oregon, but we know the guy who invented those things. You can make $1 million in the nursery business still these days. That's kind of intriguing because they bloom twice a year. So we're starting to get a little bloom late in the year now. They just went in, so in a couple of years though, you'll see a major bloom in the spring and then a big follow-up bloom in the fall with this group of azaleas. So they're really kind of neat. And back up in here, below the red trees up in there, all along that bank in there, we have what rhododendron people around the world really like. They're called the Madeni rhododendrons. They grow like weeds here. They take no special care. They will get very large eventually, but they have typically white flowers with a yellow center and wonderfully scented, almost all of them. And there's about, I think, 27 or 29 of them in the Madeni series. We hope to have all of them that are going to go clear down over the hill and down over this
And
way.
you planted these 29 up here? Are these up here?
There's about, I think there are about 14 of the series there now, and some of those are hybrids. But when it comes to the species, like I said, there's about 27 of them. I think we have all of them, with the exception of about 3. Some of them are still little tiny pots down the way, so we're going to grow those on over the next several years. But you'll see also, again, this is not necessarily the great time of the year to be seeing this. Please come back in the spring. You will not believe this place. It's just it's a fireworks. It's amazing to see because almost all of these trees in here are flowering trees. We have stewardias down the way here. These are coloring up fairly nicely for us. Back east, they just scream at you. As soon as the sap drops when it gets cold, they color up beautifully, and I'm almost surprised, but they seem to be doing fairly well. The stewardias, cornus, which is dogwood. We have Acer Gricium, the peeling bark maples. These are these trees right in here. See how the bark peels? They will get about 3 times that height, and they actually will color. You can see one starting to color there now. This is a magnolia, the great southern magnolia grandiflora. First couple of years it blew over about every windstorm, so just a big marble in there. But it seems to be rooting in very well. It's growing on very nicely now, and we're going to keep it on us for another year or so at least to make sure it stays there this time. But it's been a real show in the spring, and it's flowers off and on throughout the year. You can see there's some coming on right now. The best examples that I've seen of this in California, next time you're in Ukiah, in the middle of summer, when it's about 112 degrees down there, go out in front of the courthouse in Ukiah. There's a pair of these that must be 80, 90 feet tall, and they're just covered with blossoms. It's just amazing. The southern magnolia. But like I say, you're seeing just the barely early years, and we get a little color this time of the year, but not much yet. And there's a lot more yet to go in here. You can see relatively large areas that are unplanted, but we hope to dedicate this garden next May, and you're going to see a lot more plantings by then. And I'm really excited about it.
When these things grow up, the first speaker, were you there for the speakers today?
Oh yeah. Yeah, we've already filed a logging permit.
Said, what do you do in 20 years?
What do we do in 20 years? Literally, you log it. If necessary, you take them out. Because we have, for example, this tree right here that doesn't look like much. There's another one right there, and there's a third one way up top. Those are Davidia and Volocrata, and they're They're an amazing tree. They call them the dove tree or the handkerchief tree. They have a big white bract about like that, and a couple little white ears that come up, and these bracts sit about every 1.5 feet or 2 feet, the whole length of the thing. I thought they got about 25, 30 feet tall. We visited one in Pennsylvania that was over 85 feet. So they're going to get very large, and I don't have to worry about that. Somebody else, that's 50 years from now. But that, you know, gardens change. Your garden changes, so will this over time. But we're trying to do what we know does really well in this area. I feel very constrained in here, but I must tell you, this brushy draw that goes up here, one thing that we do very well besides the Maddenii rhododendrons is we do large leaf rhododendrons. Here are some examples in pots over here. These are, they're called auriculatums, and they bloom in the fall, which is kind of unusual. And they have little ears on the bottoms of the leaves. That's why they call them auricula. And they have big, big white frilly trusses, and they smell like heaven. They're just wonderful. So those, we have like 150 of those. A lot of this is going to go in the car park down there. They're going to spread throughout the garden. But we're going to paint this whole draw up in here, if I have my way, with large leaf rhododendrons. There's quite a number of them out there. Some of the leaves literally are 3 feet long by about 1 foot wide. And of course the plants go with them. So that will be really interesting to see over the next, hang around for the next 50 years. It's going to be really neat up there.
You mean on the bank or the top of the bank?
It's going to go right up the draw. If you work your way up, if you work your way through, you'll hear water running down there.
Where Diane is walking right now.
There's a bench up there when you get up there, but right in there you'll hear the water running in there. So I can't think of a better place, south facing. It already has some overhead cover. We're just going to fill it full of big rhododendrons, the big leaf things, and they're amazing. People have no idea what they are. They're these big dinosaur plants. They're wonderful, and we grow them like weeds around here. They're really easy. And people literally come from around the world to see Maddenii, and they really come from around the world to see the big leaves. So we're expanding, grabbing all the space we can.
Where'd you get them?
These came out of the state of Washington from. What's the nursery, June? Briggs Nursery. Briggs Nursery, a very large nursery. They started out in the reforestation business, and then they've gone into general horticulture, and they grow. They're pretty tender, so they don't do real well. They couldn't sell them in Washington, so they gave them to us. So as many as we could haul away. So we've got a bunch there. There's a whole bunch more of them back up there in pots. For us, I mean, if you want some, they're $25. That's a really good, that's wholesale.
Well, do they survive freezing?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Around here they will. Not on Neeland, but around here. Oh, they're fine. Absolutely. They're real happy. And again, they bloom in the fall.
If you want them, where do you get them? Where you get one?
Oh, just let anybody know. Let me know. But you can always ask Evan. You can call the HBGF office.
Or if you want one today.
Yeah,
I don't think we can fit them in the car today.
They're great. They're great plants, though.
Yeah,
and actually, very unusual.
Yeah, we'd like.
There's going to be at least 1 or 2 of them over here, and these trees, this one there looks like a shrub, one up behind it, and one back over here. These are eucryphias. They also bloom in the fall, and they're amazing things. They come from, there's a couple different types of them. They come from Chile, some of them, and then there's one called lucida that comes out of Tasmania. It has kind of pink flowers, but they will get up, they're kind of big candle-shaped things. They get up 15, 20 feet tall towards maturity, and long before maturity, they start blooming like crazy, and they just cover themselves with white flowers, and they're nicely scented. And then, of course, they almost all fall at once, so you get this big carpet of white underneath them. They're just beautiful, and that happens in early September usually is when they bloom. So there will be some, late season color here. I'm not sure it gets cold enough here to get a lot of color on the trees, but again, we're kind of pleased to see. Again, this is just our first year. We're kind of pleased to see at least a little color on the Acer Griseum down here and the Stewardias. And it's going to be a real interesting show as time goes on, as these trees start to fill in. So it's going to be fun. So shout out any questions whenever. I'll be hanging around.